Hello there, class. This is Mr. Pritz. We are going to take a moment to look at a survey of the prophet. These are the individuals that we're going to be studying. I've titled this mini lecture, The Prophet, a Poet with a Message. Now that we have an understanding of the world in which the nation of Israel lived during the times of the prophets, we're going to actually take a deeper look into the people themselves. Ultimately, even though we're going to be studying them through this mini lecture, you're really going to gain your understanding of the prophets through studying the literature itself. And so hopefully by the end of this course, you see that it's not only a study of the literature of the prophets, but it's a study of them, their personalities, and how they conducted themselves in the life of Israel. So the overarching theme of this mini lecture is the prophet as a mediator. Fundamentally, a prophet was a mediator between God and man. Prophecy as a mode of mediation begins in the appearance of individual persons who claim to speak Yahweh's revelatory word, and who are accepted as being indeed carriers of such a revelatory word. The prophecy culminates as the remembered words and actions of these individuals are stylized into a fixed body of literature. So not only does the prophet have to speak a mediating word between Yahweh and the people of Israel, that word has to be accepted by the community as Yahweh's words. Not just anybody can be a prophet. And at the end of this lecture, we'll actually look at 7 criteria for being a prophet in the nation of Israel. We're going to look at 4 different aspects of the prophet as mediators. So the first one is that they were summoned or called by Yahweh. The prophets speak because they are compelled by an inexplicable force that is taken to be the summons or call of Yahweh. These individuals are often viewed by supernatural or spiritual experiences, such as dreams or visions. They're non-establishment figures who will not be silenced. In their appearance, Yahweh is believed to be directly present in Israel. Number 2, they take on their tradition and they bring with them their personal experience. These individuals were steeped in the Israelite tradition, but they also reflect their own personal experiences in society. They are not isolated and lonely individuals, but individuals who were deeply committed to bringing forth the word of Yahweh into the world. And so sometimes when we're reading the prophets, you might think, man, these people are very harsh. They're harsh towards Israel, harsh towards the surrounding nations. But keep in mind that they were deeply committed to the nation of Israel. They were not looking at the nation of Israel from afar and calling down judgment upon them as it kind of seems on the surface. They were deeply committed. They were in relationship with the nation. And ultimately, they spoke their word out of love and care for the people, for the nation, on behalf of Yahweh. Number 3, oftentimes they're responding to crisis, or their message is evoking crisis. These individuals do not necessarily speak universal truths, but speak concretely to a particular time, place, and circumstance. They characteristically perceive their time and place as a circumstance of crisis, a context in which dangers are great and life or death decisions must be made. Oftentimes, it seems as though the prophets evoke a crisis that none had previously perceived. So a way of thinking of the prophets is that they have a way of seeing the world that the common man in Israel, the common woman in Israel did not see. A lot of times even the king of Israel doesn't see the impending doom or the impending crisis, or they're overlooking aspects of society that need to be taken more seriously. And so for the prophets, it's really a perception. They see something in the world and they have to speak on it. Number 4, the prophets had a power of poetic imagination. As I titled this mini lecture, A Poet with a Message, The prophets were essentially poets. They were poets who spoke a word. And poets have a way, even poets in our time, they have a way of speaking about something that draws on our emotion and draws on our experience, and it calls us to action. Think of music that we listen to that pulls us in, it draws us in, and then we act on what those poets are saying. Well, the prophets are the same. They're most characteristically utterers. They speak most often with all of the elusiveness and imaginative power of poetry. They speak in images and metaphors that aim to disrupt, destabilize, and invite to an alternative perception of reality. There's an imaginative power of the prophets to construe, picture, and imagine reality outside of the dominant portrayals of reality that have been taken as givens. So a lot of what we're going to be doing when we study the prophetic literature is studying poetry. We're going to be studying speeches, but these speeches with a poetic imagination. And a lot of what we're doing is trying to unveil and uncover the truth that they're speaking through the poetic words that they're choosing to use. So you'll find that when we start reading the prophets, they're filled with literary images and figurative language. And so we're going to be peeling those layers back to try to see what is the fundamental truth that they're speaking, and why are they choosing to use these images in this way? What kind of emotion is it evoking in us? And so that's the power of the poetic imagination. And lastly, let's look at 7 criteria for a prophet of Israel. So, like I said before, prophets, not just anybody could be a prophet. They had to be called. They had to be an Israelite. They had to be empowered by the Holy Spirit. They had to serve as God's spokesperson. They had to be given his authority in speaking in the name of the Lord, a good shepherd over God's people, and vindicated his message by signs. So what happened with this prophetic word is that it would be spoken to the nation of Israel. And then the authenticity of that prophetic word is whether it came true. Did the judgment fall on Israel as the prophet spoke? Did the person come, whoever the prophets were speaking about, did that person actually come? And what you'll see is in the prophetic literature, these prophets spoke a word that came true. But we must remember that they were not only speaking of the future, they were speaking in the present, and they were saying, if you continue in this way, this is going to occur. They had a way of seeing the consequences of the nation's actions, and they were calling them to live in a better way. And so even though the word of the prophet, the Old Testament prophet, may be a little bit difficult to understand at first, I think what we'll find is that it's deeply, deeply relevant to our lives and to who we are now, and that we can even embody a poetic imagination, a prophetic imagination in our life today.